I'm Anna Webb. Welcome to A Dog's Life. Hey, Mr. Binks, you know I've talked about when I went to Paris with Molly, and we had a great time. And of course, you know that I drove Prudence all the way from Germany back into the UK. And on both these occasions, we used the shuttle. Well, we're going to jump on Zoom now and speak to Brenda Stowers, who's brought Le Pet Express to market. That means you can get to France and not have to drive. Brenda Stowers, welcome to A Dog's Life.
Oh, thank you. It's nice to be here.
Well, I'm so excited to talk to you because, gosh, we were introduced through, a mutual friend, really. A friend of mine who gave me the news that there is this amazing service called Le Pet Express, which I just had to record a podcast about, Brenda, because it's amazing. Tell us a little bit more about Le Pet Express.
Certainly. No, I was excited as well. So what we do is if you don't have a car, whether you're in the UK or whether you're in France and you have a pet, whether it's a dog, a cat, a rabbit, a ferret, we will pick you up at the train station and we will take you from the UK over to France. And then we will drop you off at the train station over there, and you can take the train off to Paris or to Lille to go off to Germany, blah, blah, blah. And we also pick you up on the French side, and we bring you back to the UK through the Eurotunnel, and we drop you off at Ashford International so that you can take the train straight up to London and head out from there. So if you don't have a car, and you're like me, when I moved to the UK in 2010 and had a 90-pound German Shepherd and 2 cats, I'm like, how do I get them into the UK? Because I don't want to put them in the hold. And we bridge that gap for you.
So just going back to when you moved over from the UK, was that from San Francisco, Brenda?
It was from San Francisco. I was relocating to London for work, and I had a 90-pound German Shepherd and 2 senior cats. And I was like, how am I going to get them to the UK without putting them in the hold? And I ended up, in the beginning, I booked on the Queen Mary. I had to book 18 months in advance because there's 12 kennels and 5,000 beds. Go figure.
Yeah. Oh, did you do that? The Queen Mary? I've always wanted to do that.
Well, I ended up not doing it. I had to do it 18 months in advance, and I was going to drive my senior dog and 2 senior cats, 2,500 miles from San Francisco to New York, get on the Queen Mary, and off we were going to come. And my dog died before then, which kind of makes sense because, she was an older dog. And so when she died, what I did was I canceled the Queen Mary. So I never made it actually to the Queen Mary. And I bought 2 airline tickets, one for myself and one for a friend of mine, to fly direct from San Francisco up to Charles de Gaulle. And he took 1 cat and I took the other cat, and we went in cabin and we landed in Charles de Gaulle. And I'm like, okay, well, at least I'm this far. And in 2010, there was nobody doing this business. And I finally found a driver in London who would send someone over, charge me £1,000, pick me up in Paris, and took me up to London in one day. And for me, having gone through that process, I was on the Dover ferry and I'm staring at, the White Cliffs of Dover, as they are. I know you hear about, what that means to people. And for me, I was standing there going, you know what? Someday I am going to change this. It does not have to be this hard.
No, exactly. Sorry to cut in, but it's interesting, isn't it? It's always, I'm actually Canadian by birth and half Swedish. So traveling has been something I always did with my family. And it was always that Britain remained rabies free, and quarantine rules. The thought of ever taking your dog with you to Paris was never going to happen. For the majority of my life, that was always the thing because you had quarantine and that was it. So the whole evolvement really of the pet passport scheme was utterly unbelievable. If my dad had been alive to see it, he would never, it was a big step for mankind in a way, But I'm sure the Brexit now has made things a little trickier, has it, Brenda?
It's made it trickier. I mean, the rules didn't change. The EU pet passport scheme and the British government, they are in alignment. So the rules are the same on both sides of the channel. What's changed is the documentation, which is what makes it tricky. And so what we do with our customers is once they place an order, we send them a pet checklist and we say, please, please, please send us your pet's documents. This is what you need to do. And we will check them in advance. So what needs to happen is your animal needs to have a microchip. This is the tricky part. The microchip date has to be on or before the rabies vaccination date. And if it's not valid and the Eurotunnel will say no to you. But they have to be microchipped. They have to have a current rabies vaccination. And that's what is required to get to France for dogs, cats, and ferrets. If you're coming back to the UK, your dog also needs to have the tapeworm treatment. But we pre-check it when we send out the emails. And then we also, once you're at the train station, we take a look at your documentation. And if you're on the British side, we don't let you on the van. And we say, go get it fixed and come back and we'll take you when it is. Because if we get down to the Eurotunnel, it's a locked facility. And we would have to leave and drop the person off at Folkestone and then come back and get back in the queue at the Eurotunnel. And then everybody else would get to go. And that cost us about an hour and a half to 2 hours delay. So we do as much as we can to pre-check it with people. We have lots of conversations. We get lots of screenshots with attachments, say, please check my documents. And when something does go wrong, like I've got a guy in Morocco right now who's bringing 2 cats over. The vet forgot to stamp 1 page, and yeah, exactly. It's little things,
little things. Well, I mean, I've traveled through the shuttle several times. And the first time I did it, actually, we were at the passport control at Calais, because pets have their own building, don't they, Brenda, where you go and you can park in front of that section and, literally see an official. And next to us were a family in utter despair because their vet in France had not countersigned the wormer, the all-important wormer, to come back in, and being refused. And the dog had a passport and obviously had been in and out of France and the UK several times, and they were begging this official, because they'd missed their train, this was disaster. And they obviously couldn't leave their dog in Calais, the thought, can you imagine? So it was panic stations. And it does seem to be the paperwork that gets people, if you like, every time.
It does. And it doesn't have to. I mean, what I noticed is when I first started the company, we had like a 30% dropout rate, meaning people were getting the paperwork wrong for silly little things like the vet didn't dot this, they didn't cross that T, sort of thing. So as soon as I started sending out the pet checklist and encouraging people to send over their documents, that rate has gone down to like maybe 1 or 2%. So we really, really, really try and hold your hand and say, please send us your documents. We'll work with you. Send us the screenshots before you get on the van. Once you get on the van, we take a look at them for the last time. And then we prepare you for what you say. Like the first thing we do when we get to the Eurotunnel is we all get out of the van and we walk in together and we go to pet reception. And it's kind of like showtime at that point. There's no turning back. So what I do let people know is if their paperwork's going to pass or not. And then if it's not going to pass, it's what I call playing poker, right? You give them the documents that are incorrect. And then, this is the best piece of paper that you should give them next to try and build the story to see if you can go. So we will help them if their documents are wrong. If the Eurotunnel says no, the Eurotunnel says no, and they can't travel with us that day.
Have you ever had a case where there was just, say, the vet's signature, which seems ridiculous to fail you on that because you've got the strip of the vaccine or the wormer to prove that, a pharmaceutical was used. Have you ever been able to turn it around?
Yes, we have. So what we do is, and the Eurotunnel will try as well, we will say, can you show us the receipt of where you took this dog over to the vet? Usually it happens in Spain, it seems like, where they forget to sign, and show us the receipt of where the wormer was put, right? The date and the time. And a lot of times they will accept that. They will also accept like the credit card receipt if the customer has that. So we do that. I had one lady once, she had a letter from AFA saying that because her dog was like, literally, this was like a 16-year-old Chihuahua she was relocating back to the UK. And she had a letter from AFA, and the letter said that the animal was too old and it didn't, it couldn't withstand the tapeworm treatment. And I kind of looked at her and I said, well, I've never seen anything like this before, right? So we get to the Eurotunnel and she tells them that. And of course they say, no, 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 this isn't going to fly, right? And I said, well, hold on. We've got a few minutes and it's midweek. Can she contact AFA and can they send her a letter and send it to you? And we waited 20 minutes and she got AFA, on the phone. And the man at AFA was very, very nice and supportive. And I said, look, we're here at the Eurotunnel. This is what's been said. She sent you the email. Can you please write an email right now and send it to the Eurotunnel so that they will let the 16-year-old Chihuahua go through? And AFA did. And the dog got to go that day. So we do what sometimes I always say, no 2 days are the same. You really have to be on your toes. Okay, are we going to call AFA today? I didn't get up in the morning and think that one, right?
Yeah, well, that must, be great fun on the, on the other hand, because you can't take that many people at once. There's rules and regs, isn't there now? Post-Brexit, DEFRA have made some new guidelines. Explain what they are.
Sure. So for us, we have a DEFRA type 1, which means that we can take 5 pets. So we can take 5 dogs or 5 cats or 5 ferrets. We are not an animal transporter, which allows you to take up to 10. But because we have a van, we take 5 pets and we have weight limits and we take 5 people. So those are pretty much what the rules are. It's 5 a day over and 5 a day back sort of thing.
I assume you've got everything like really kitted out in the actual Pet Express for maximum comfort for the dogs and their safety and keeping cool in the summer, maybe keeping a little warmer in the winter.
Yes. Well, what we do, I always joke. I'll get to the cages in a minute, but I always joke that the customer seats are more comfortable than the drivers because I spent extra money. When I designed the van, I bought slightly wider seats and for the people, and I spaced them slightly further apart so that people had the comfort as well as the animals. So on the animals, what we have to have is the cages have to be affixed. The animals have to go in the cages. There are regulations around that. And what we have is we will have on one side of the van, you will have the seats, and directly opposite is the cage where your animal goes in. And it's a professionally kitted cage, just like what you see in the police cars. It has a lock on the front. And your dog or your cat is right there. And it's huge. These cages are, at least 1 meter long, and 3/4 of a meter high. So your dog or your cat has plenty of room to move around. What we say to people is we ask them to, if it's a dog, to put their little carrier in there so that they can feel safe. If it's a cat, we say to them that we're going to put out a wee pad. We will we'll close all the doors and we'll let the owner unzip the cat and let the cat wander around inside the cage while we're in transit. So we try and, make it as comfortable while being as safe as possible that is necessary per the regulations.
Yeah, gosh, that sounds super. So, because that's been the point of the shuttle, really, that it was or it still is, the only way you can travel to Europe with your dog by your side, because on a ferry, you have to leave the dog down in the clanky carpet with oil and dreadful noises going on. And of course, flying 9 times out of 10, the dog will have to go in the hold. Those are the rules. So, it's a marvelous service. And, and you're maintaining that by keeping the dogs opposite. I had no idea you had the actual van custom built.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. It was quite the experience, because I got to, play around. Do we want the luggage by the front door? No, let's move it by the back door, because at the end of the journey, people just want their luggage and they want to go catch their train and be on their way, sort of thing. So yeah, it's very interesting. I've learned a lot about, designing vans and what people like, what they don't like. People think it's really cool that it has like a fireman's pole right by the door. That's for structural integrity, but it makes for a good, conversation point. But yeah, it is a well kitted out van.
It's just brilliant, the fireman's pole. Now, you meet everyone at Ashford, which, of course, is the international train station for the Eurostar, which we must just say here probably will never accept dogs on it. Who knows why, but I guess in a way, Brenda, that's good for you. But you meet at Ashford in Kent, and there's lots of reasons for that.
Yes, there are quite a few reasons. When I lived in London and I was looking at starting this company, I went to London Bridge Rail Station and I said, could I have a paper map, please, of the rail network? And I laid it out on my living room floor and I said, where do all the trains go? Where do they come from when they go through the Southeast, right? And where's the international train station? Where does it have big platforms? Where does it have lifts? Where does it have sufficient parking? There's 5 parking lots at Ashford International. Where does it have a turnaround area? And I looked on the map and I went, Ashford International, someday I'm going to live there, right? And that's how I came up with Ashford International, because they built it out for the Eurostar. And like you say, I mean, they're not allowing pets. So we're using their facilities and it's working well for us.
And yeah, and I mean, I guess you could drive to Ashford if you wanted to, because I would assume there's lots of secure parking facilities if, you wanted to do that.
There are at least 5 parking lots there. There are security guards walking around. They are secured. There are also trains, 38 minutes from London St. Pancras to Ashford International, an hour from London Bridge, an hour 10 minutes from Charing Cross, and from London Victoria to Ashford International. So that was, again, when I did the exercise of laying the map out, I went, where are the trains going and how long does it take them to get there?
Yep. So, I mean, so military precision, this sounds. And it seems to me that then at Ashford, when you're pre-checking everyone's documents, it reminds me of being at an airport where you go to the initial check-in before you get to the departure lounge, which I guess is when you actually have been checked in at Folkestone, and you can enjoy some of the dog-friendly services, of which I played a little part actually with the exercise zone that's down at Folkestone. Yes, I worked with the Euro Tunnel team to help create that for maximum kind of fun for the dogs.
I can only say thank you for that, because what it affords us is, once we get everyone pre-checked at Ashford International, we do a 30-minute drive down the M20 and we go straight to the Eurotunnel. We check in and we usually have 20 to 30 minutes. And that way people can everybody gets off the van. We go to pet reception as a little team. And then afterwards, everybody, I tell them, okay, we need to be back here in 30 minutes. And they get to go to the pet play area, or they can go inside and grab a cup of coffee or go to the bathrooms if they'd like. But yes, thank you so much, because that pet play area, like I said, it's where they go do their business and they can run around and be bouncy. And that way they get tired and they come back to the van and they sleep for the rest of the journey.
Because it's not long, the shuttle, is it? Am I right? Was it 40 minutes?
It's 35 minutes once it starts to move. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So, it's very expedient. I mean, can't even do it in a plane that quickly, really. I don't think. Maybe you can. But what's the biggest dog you've taken?
We've had Great Danes. And when I designed the van, I said to the guy that was designing it, I said, I need these cages to be big enough to accommodate Great Danes. And I've had Great Danes on the van. I had one lady show up from Poland with her daughter, and they had like a Great Dane and a Chihuahua, and it was
Oh, all creatures great and small, Brenda, will travel on Le Pet Express.
Absolutely, absolutely. And there's room for everybody. The Great Danes, just the cages are big enough for them. So it's fantastic.
Yeah, no, amazing. I guess if one person is traveling with 2 dogs, those 2 dogs add up towards your 5 total. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense. In terms of ferrets, because I'm fascinated by ferrets, they do really need to be secure. It's a funny story, but I drove oh gosh, a son of my a friend of my parents' son up from London one Christmas, and he had a ferret named Bianca, and she escaped out of her container as we were on the M1. I mean, seriously, you can't make it up. Nothing bad happened. It was all fine. But they can wriggle out of things, ferrets. So tell me a bit more about your ferrets that come with you.
Well, Yes, they are very wriggly, and I find it very nervy that, my customers, when we get into pet reception, they take them out of the bag and they hold them like little baby dolls, and I'm standing there going, OMG. Um, However, when we are on the van, what we do is we let the ferret people on first, and we also do this with the cat people. We let them on first. We close the van door, and I say to them, you can let your animal out of the carrier and let it run around the cage, close the cage door, and once you've done that, tap on the van door, and then I'll open it. So we do that purposefully so that we don't have ferret on the run, on the M20 sort of thing.
Yes, yes, no, but it's all very important. This, I mean, your meticulous attitude is really inspiring to me, Brenda. For me, having done the shuttle, for me, for example, I used to live in Paris. I love going to Paris, and for me to have the opportunity to not have to bother with my car would make going to Paris a lot more fun, and you could prolong the enjoyment of Paris without worrying about the drive, because it's quite a drive from Calais to Paris. I mean, the roads are better, and there's less cars, but it's still about 4 hours to the center of Paris. It's quite a drive. So it makes it quite tiring if you're driven from London to Folkestone. And so the idea of just jumping on a train at Calais, how dog friendly is, because the Eurostar isn't dog friendly, but how dog friendly are normal trains in France?
So trains in France are slightly different than trains in the UK. Trains in the UK, dogs and cats can ride free and dogs can ride unmuzzled. In France, dogs, you have to buy a ticket. It's about €7, and they need to be muzzled. And what I say to customers is, bring the muzzle, put it on when asked, right? And I've only had one customer say to me that she was actually asked to put the muzzle on her dog. But muzzles are required in France, but they can go on the trains.
Interesting. I mean, what advice, for anyone listening right now thinking, gosh, I want to do this, I've got to do this, would you give in terms of a little bit of preparation? I always say prepare, prepare, prepare to help your dog, travel smoothly.
I believe the best thing that any pet owner can do for their dog is to send us their pet's documents in advance. And that way, when they get to the train station, they know that everything has been ticked and tied. So that means, you go to the vet, you've already had the microchip done. The best thing they can really do is make sure that the vet writes the microchip date on or before the rabies vaccination date. And I say that, and that sounds so simplistic. However, most people will say to me, but I got my dog microchip 10 years ago. And my response is this is not about when you got your dog microchipped. This is about the date the vet wrote in the documentation.
But Brenda, what if you're at a different vet's from when you got your dog microchipped?
Exactly. And that's why I say to people, don't pay the vet unless they've put at least the date of the rabies vaccination of the microchip. Because one of the big points of the EU pet passport scheme is to confirm that the animal does not have rabies before it enters the UK. So the identification point for that is the microchip. So
sorry, Brenda, you've actually confused me here. Hang on. Okay, so yes, you have a date when the microchip. So on the microchip number, does that contain the date that you actually inserted that microchip?
No idea. And if so, it's on a database that none of us have access to, is the answer.
Well, there's so many databases.
Exactly.
I mean, it's an utter, I think, mess actually, and it should all be centralized like the DVLA system, if you ask me. And that's another podcast episode. So wait, I don't really get this date of the microchip. Surely just having your dog microchipped is what matters, which is one of the main rules. And of course, the date of the rabies has to be documented without doubt. So I don't get it.
Okay, so let's just talk about if you have a UK animal health certificate and you're in the UK, and who knows where your dog was microchipped and how many years ago. What the vet knows is that vet has never seen that dog. You've walked in the door and you say, I want a UK animal health certificate. And they say, that's fine, we can do that. And what they will do is they will look and see, okay, you've got the original rabies vaccination. So that means we don't have to revaccinate the animal. Now, for the vet to fill out the UK animal health certificate under the field, and this is the crazy bit, Anna, it says for the microchip, date of implantation or date read. Today's date could be the date the vet read it, which means that today's date of the microchip is after the rabies vaccination date. And the microchip has to be on or before the rabies vaccination date. So the paperwork is very, very misleading for people, and they get tripped up on it all the time.
Really see why. So
Yes.
wait, so basically, so say Prudence had an up-to-date rabies vaccination right now. Lovely. You know, she's 8. So her microchip went in 8 years ago in Germany, not near the vet. So basically the vet would have to confirm that the rabies is in there. I've scanned her chip today, and therefore I authorize that it was read after the rabies shot.
If they do that, they've created an invalid document. What they have to do is they have to say that the microchip, they have to trust that the rabies vaccination document that they're being handed, that the animal listed is the one in front of them, and therefore they are allowed to put the microchip date as the same as the rabies vaccination date, and that creates a valid document. If they put the microchip date as today's date, it falls after the microchip, after the rabies vaccination date, and that's an invalid document.
Wow. So I'm sure a lot of people are getting caught out by this.
Yes.
You know, because it's such a new change that I'm sure it's even confusing the vets, to be quite honest. Perhaps, you know, not meaning to confuse them, because I know, you know, obviously no one knew what was going to happen when Brexit actually happened, and then these animal health certificates were introduced. So I can see maybe why the vets are, I hate to say this, but charging, I think, rather a lot of money to supply people with these animal health certificates, because people only want to go on holiday really with their dog. But, you know, particularly in the cost of living crisis, it's quite an expensive process, isn't it, Brenda?
It is. I mean, from what our customers tell us, they, in the UK, they will pay about £250 for that animal health certificate. I had an American lady the other day. She told me she paid $450 for hers. That was to get the animal into the UK. And so it doesn't seem to be just the British vets. It seems to be the vets globally, you know, that they recognize that this is, you know, if you love your pet, you're going to do this. So we're going to charge you as much as possible, which is absolutely highway robbery.
Yeah, I think, you know, for this, because it is simply a question of signing some paperwork. But I think as well, it all hit at a time when vets were particularly, you know, under duress in a way. You know, I mean, British vets are down in terms of manpower by 50%, you know, because of Brexit. I know a Spanish vet that I used to see is no longer in London, for example. So that's a major issue really in terms of getting vet appointments, full stop. However, but it's good that you are able, when your customers send over the documentation of the microchip and the rabies shot, that you are able to deduce this, and hopefully you've caught this error in time for people to maybe run back to their vet and say, look, no, we've checked with the Pet Express, and unfortunately this is a bit incorrect, and I'm not going to be able to get into France unless you re-sign this. Or what, Brenda?
Well, that's one of the hardest parts of our job, is to deliver the bad message, right? Because the answer to that question is the Eurotunnel will say no, and we are obliged to respect that. And at that point, we drop you off at the local hotel in Calais until you get it resolved. And that's the seriousness of all of this, which is why we say, please, please, please send us pictures of your pet's documentation, and we will gladly check it in advance.
So do you have a list of local vets in Calais where people can go to get the essential wormer?
The Eurotunnel does, and we refer them to that link, and the Eurotunnel also gives them the list of vets.
Okay, so that's all catered for. Now, you know, it's important, isn't it, to land in countries at the official destination, or you could get in lots of trouble, like Johnny Depp did, for example, with his teacup Yorkies when he went to Australia.
Yeah, I mean, ironically, I think I don't know much about maritime law in Great Britain. In Australia, apparently, you have to declare that you're coming in with your pets before you actually arrive. And it's my understanding that that didn't happen with Johnny Depp, and that's why the Australians got bent out of shape over that one. In the UK, what's important is that for us as a transporter is that the British government has declared specific ports of entry as official entry ports for bringing your pets in, and also for immigration purposes, because we have a lot of people who are moving to Great Britain and they need to go through these ports to have their passport stamped. And the Eurotunnel is one of those ports, which is why we travel on the Eurotunnel for that.
And that would be why you have actually brought, some people in from Ukraine with their pets, right?
Yes, I mean the Ukrainians are always a heartbreak. One of the things the Ukrainian rules, you think the rules are crazy for the microchip and the rabies vaccination. The Ukrainians have about, two other rules that apply to them, and they're very good. They always send us their documents. The heartbreaker is when, the invasion first happened, we would pull up at the Eurotone pet reception on the French side, and there would just be Ukrainians there saying, "Can you take me? Can you take me? Can you take me?" Right? And that's just so hard, because it's like, well, we're full today. If we weren't full, I would ask people on the van, I said, I will pre-check these people and I will ensure that they have the valid documents. And are you guys okay with, them coming along? Because we've got an extra seat for, a person and a dog. And no one ever said no, and on one day we had this lady and her daughter, and they had two dogs. And one of them was a dog like yours, a little bull terrier.
Oh.
And it was very cold. And what struck me in all of this was this bull terrier, because they don't have a lot of fur.
No, they don't like the cold.
No,
or the rain.
And they're like standing in the parking lot, on the French side in Calais at the Eurotunnel at the pet reception. And this dog had on, it was like a child's sweater. They had cut off the bottom of it, and it had two arms where the front legs went, and it had like this big turtleneck collar. And that's what they just, swooped it over the head of this dog, and they put the sweater on. And of course it has a hole in the side, but I mean, it was just darling, how much someone loves their dog, that they're going to travel all the way across Europe to go to the UK, where I checked their documents. Their pets' documents were correct. And then I asked them, I said, may I see your passports, and may I see your letter of entry from the British government authorizing you to enter into the UK? And so they showed me all that, and I said, great. Okay, so that's the first checkpoint. And thankfully, there was a lady on the van that day who was traveling with her daughter also. And she spoke Ukrainian, because these customers that were literally begging me, when I say begging me, what they were doing was standing there with their two dogs, mom and daughter, and she's shoving a wad of money at me, right? And that's just not really a comfortable position to be in. And so I said to the Ukrainian passenger that I already had on board, I said, can you please tell her how much it is, right? And she told her how much it was. It was like 330 pounds. And the lady just gave me this pile of money, and I counted it, and it was like 500 pounds. And I said, no, this is too much. And I gave her the money back. And this is, to me, the level of desperation. The lady shoves the money back at me, and I said, no, I gave it to the daughter. I said, you keep that money. It's not mine. You're going to need that money when you get to Great Britain, right?
Yes. That's this, Brenda, sort of epitomizes to me why you're doing this service, because you really understand about staying together with your pets. You've done that, and then it's like the kindness of this service oozes out to me, that you want it all to go really well, no hiccups at passport control, and then helping people come in like this. Wow. And these people show how their dog matters to them. I mean, this is the inexplicable bond. I mean, they might be quite happy to leave their mother-in-law in Calais, but they're not going to leave their dog.
No, absolutely not. When people are traveling with their pet, I always say to people, and when we answer the phones, this is their furry children. right? And that's how we have to take this, because that's how I treat my dog and my cat. You know, they are my furry children, and I want them to be with me. I want to see them. I want to give them a comfortable ride. I want to know that, you know, I can be there with them. And so, yes, we do. We try and make it so that, you know, the owner is with the pet all the way. There's time for a potty break, you know, and what we find also is that the pets tend to be very calm on the van when we are traveling, because part of what I do is I try and engage the customers in a conversation, right? How old is your pet? Where did you get your pet from? You know, all of those types of questions, because it's been my experience that when everybody on the van is talking about their pet, the animals realize that they are a part of a pack and they become very quiet.
That's very interesting, very interesting. But of course, you know, stress is contagious, right? So, you know I was really nervous about the paperwork and everything. And particularly when I was traveling on my own with Prudence coming in and with her as a puppy. And it was the first day we spent together driving 8 hours from near Dusseldorf back to Buckinghamshire. We did it in a day. And my point being, you know, my stress was contagious to Prudence because dogs smell stress, because they smell cortisol levels rising and falling. So if everyone on the van is relaxed because they're not driving, having a nice time, they're meeting like-minded people, it must be great. The dogs and the cats and the ferrets will be thinking, oh, there's a happy vibe going on here. We don't, you know, so because stress is contagious. So I think it's a wonderful way of traveling stress-free on a load of levels, actually, Brenda.
Thank you. I mean, it is. I mean, one of the first things I say once I've pre-checked everybody and they've gotten on the van is there are 3 checkpoints. And the first one is pet reception. And the good news is that all of your pets are good to go, right? And then after that, it's always the humans, right? Then there's 2 checkpoints, one on the, you know, for the British to look at your passport and the other one for your French. And I walk them through the process as we go through that purposefully, so that people know, why are we doing stop and go? Why are we going up to this gate, sort of thing? Because it's like you say, is the more we can keep the tension down and the more we can keep people engaged, you know, please, can you help me stack up the passports, sort of thing, so that everybody is in it together and we're working together. The animals pick up on that. They pick up on it a lot. And it keeps for a quiet van.
Yeah, brilliant. No, I love that. I really do. And I'm sure, you know, you take essential water with you, or do the pet parents actually take the supplies, if you like, perhaps a cheeky snack for the dog halfway? But it's such a quick ride, like 35 minutes. It's, you know, it's not like going on the ferry, which is a lot longer. You know, it's a wonderful service, you know, the shuttle. And I think you've really, you know, you've really hit the jackpot, in my view, to help people have adventures and spend extra time with their beloved fur babies.
Yes. I mean, we do carry water bowls and we do carry water. We're actually required to do that. The crazy regulations that we're under are for animals for slaughter, and animals for slaughter must have access to water and they must have a certain cage of a certain size, which is why we have cages big enough for Great Danes. And it's also why we carry dog bowls and we have water on board. Nonetheless, you know, you have to know about these regulations and make it, you know, turn it around and say, okay, you know, would anyone like water for their dog? Would anyone like water for their cat? And a lot of people bring their own water bowls, and that's fine, because the floors of the van are not carpeting. They're rubberized.
I knew they'd be rubberized. That's such a good idea.
Has to be, you know, no one's ever had a potty accident. We have had a dog or 2 throw up. You know, and that's just the way it goes, you know, and usually it's because the owner fed the dog before the journey. So, you know, lesson learned, please don't feed your dog before you go on the journey, sort of thing.
No, and then I suppose the other question, Brenda, is, so when you get to Calais, it's brilliant to be dropped off at the train station, but just say you wanted to hire a car and drive on, you know, the right side of the road rather than being in a left-hand drive car, which, you know, I know from experience isn't always as easy as it might seem. So you're better off in a French car when you're driving in France. Yeah, is that easy to sort out?
It is. So what we've done is, at the train station that we drop passengers off at Calais Freight Ton, there's an Avis car rental, which is downstairs. And also, if people don't want to rent from Avis, there are car rental companies in Calais-Ville. And what we have is we have a list of pet-friendly taxis that we give customers the phone number for the pet-friendly taxis. They come and collect them, and they take them off to the car rental places down by the, I think it's the ferry port.
Mm-hmm.
Get their
Oh,
car.
no, that makes sense. No, Calais-Ville is absolutely lovely. So I remember when I traveled with Ivana, we'd no sooner got through the shuttle because it was a quick trip. So we had to get the wormer done as soon as we arrived in order for it to be in the time frame, because the time frame certainly then was very tricky. You know, if you had your wormer done, now let me think if I can remember, less than 48 hours, so 24 hours before you're returning, that's no good either.
No, I mean, you have to have it at least 24 hours. So we tell people it has to be done at least before 4 o'clock on the day of our journey. And it expires after day 5/120 hours. And they're very, oh my goodness. I had a lady from Malaysia. She flew in with her little dog, and she had the wormer done in Malaysia. And we got to the Eurotunnel, and it was like 123 hours.
Oh no. So what happened?
Well, we're all sitting there, looking up, the time that it is in France and the time it is in Malaysia. And they said no. And it was terrible, So I dropped her off. I told her in advance because I caught it at Calais Freighton. And I said, oh, this is not good. This is really not good. We're going to speed up there as soon as, as quickly as we can, get everybody boarded to see if we can, get you through. They said no, dropped her off at the hotel. And what happened was she had meetings in London, and she left the dog with a boarder, and then she actually had the dog transported from Calais up to her in London because she was at work every day and she couldn't come back with us to bring the dog back again.
Oh,
tragic.
Gosh.
It's tragic, absolutely tragic.
And then the dog would have had another wormer. Yes, yes. Gosh, we mustn't be putting people off listening to this with, wormer panic and whatever. Trust me, even I've smoothly gone in and out 4 times driving myself, that it is possible but that was with an EU passport, but it is possible. I think you just have to keep on your vet's case and rely on Brenda to double check and to be aware of this wormer detail. But you only need the wormer right when you're coming back in from France. So it's not needed when you meet at Ashford.
That's right. And, once we started doing the pet checklist, our dropout rate is about 1% to 2%. Because people often ask me that question. I say it is so, so rare. Because, we really put ourselves in front of people. Please, please, please send us your pet's documents. We will gladly check them for you. Right?
Yes. Yeah. So it's like a, cradle, like a proper travel agent service, really, because of course you want it all to go very smoothly for your customers. Yeah, I mean, Brenda, I'm looking forward to a weekend in Paris, let me tell you, and certainly traveling with you to do it. Hurrah! We better get a date in the diary, but I'm sure you're getting pretty booked up. The links are going to be in the show notes to how you book, but just, explain quickly how you book.
Certainly. So I tried to make it as easy as possible. If you go to the homepage, lepetexpress.com, you'll see a button that says book now. If you want to go UK to France, you click that button. If you want to go France to UK, you click that button. You select the date on the calendar if it's green, and then you just follow the shopping cart and check out.
Can you just book a return trip though? So say you're going for a weekend, can you book the whole return package all at once?
Yes, you can. Yes, you have to select the dates and you put them in the cart and then you check out at once. Yes.
Excellent. No, that's great. And it is fun to go and have an adventure with your dog or your cat. It's amazing. Look, Brenda, thank you so much for coming on A Dog's Life. And I must say, I think this is genius, and a great service to make travel with your pet so much easier.
Super. Thank you very much for having me.
That's our show, Mr. Binks. What did you think? Oh, yes, I know you want to go on Le Pet Express. Well, we'll have to sort that out. Yes, you're right. It is time for Woof of the Week. There's no better experience than travelling over to the EU with your pet. And now there's no excuse with Le Pet Express. Well, I hope you all enjoyed it. If you did, go on, rate and review the show wherever you tune into your podcast. It really, really helps. Thanks again, of course, to Brenda Stowers for joining us today, and all the links and how to book Le Pet Express are in the show notes. Thanks, of course, to Mike Hansen, my producer, for all the music and production as ever. What's that, Mr. Binks? Yes, you're right. We will be back in your feed next week. So why don't you subscribe now? And that way you'll never miss another show. Bye for now.